And this is what 7AD looked like from the 70s through into the 80s. It was just a small door in the mall, and you saw the sign, you went through the door, and you went up the stairs. You also went back into black and white for a few minutes because I'm afraid this tape is a little bit old. And so just bear with us as we go up the first flight of stairs to celebrate Country Music Month, and then turn around, up the second flight of stairs, and you're pretty much at the main entrance to 907 AD, which was also your sound alternative 907 AD while I was there, and also for a while Holiday Coast 7 AD. We're into the office now, and first up we're going to go where no announcer in his right mind would have tread in back in the day. This was the sales office, where the salespeople, funnily enough, used to get together and figure out who would like to buy the advertising on the station, which of course kept us all in jobs, and not to mention in money. Leaving the sales office, we move right next door to the main reception area, and it cannot be underscored how cold this was in winter. The wind would whistle up the stairs. There was no way of keeping it properly warm, and you would just freeze. I'm very glad I didn't have Tina's job in those days. And this was the traffic area where the logs were produced to tell you when and where to play commercials, that sort of thing. Now into colour at last, and preparing to move towards the broadcast stroke production suite, but first through what we laughingly used to call the green room. This also used to cop a fair bit of wind in the middle of winter, so if you're a guest, the best thing to do was to arrive on time and get straight in. So you'd move on down this fairly small and narrow corridor, and with that left-hand turn, you are now into the production stroke broadcast area. Now, production is straight ahead, but first we're going to head off into the music library, and also it was the Jocks room as well. This is the library of music we had to play, and looking back on it now, it is very, very small, but that, I guess, was the way it was. And some of the records you're going to see here on this wall, some were okay to play. The majority of these were songs that had been rejected as not being suitable for the format of the station at the time. Those Legos, they were a giveaway that kept on giving. It took almost a year to get rid of them. There were so many of the things. So this is just the general shelving. These were the albums we were playing. That's where you tested the music. This stuff here was the music that was not considered right for air. And in the foreground, some 7-inch reel-to-reel tape recordings, probably Chicken Man at that time, I think I'm right in saying. This particular desk was the program manager's desk. Probably deserved better. And on it is that stack of carts, and this machinery here was how you actually made or wound carts. This is something the average modern radio announcer would just not understand because it's all computerized, of course. This is just some of the general mess that we like to put together. Never were a particularly tidy lot, it has to be said, and I doubt if that's changed over the years. And there were our individual little message slots where we used to get memos from management and all the other things that radio announcers, the egomaniacs that we are, really enjoy receiving. And those were the steps to let us get up to the top shelf. Okay, let's get out of here now, and moving from the record library, we're going to go into the production area. On the right, you can see the main broadcast studio. We'll get to that in a moment. But here we are in the production area, and first we go into the main production studio. This, again, by today's standards, would look tremendously primitive, and even by those standards, it really was. Everything today would be computerized. What we had was this desk, which was a very, very old desk, but could go to air, by the way. It has, as you might be able to pick out on the VU meter, which is the yellow bit in the middle, a slight crack, which was caused by the fist of an announcer on a particularly frustrating day. But this wasn't great equipment, but it sort of just about got the job done if you were lucky. Turntables to play the music, which we'll have a look at in a moment. The microphone, we'll introduce that, and radio announcer when he comes to the full shot a little later on. This was our main recording facility. You could fake 2-track on this particular machine. You could also get a little bit of reverb, but those were all the effects. This particular tape recorder, you could just play a tape back in order to create the 2-track sound. But that was it. As I say, compared to the average, even home computer these days, that was absolutely primitive. And these were some instructions, of course, which had to be left in writing on what you had to do when you were talking to 7BU, which included getting things for 7AD and sending some things to our sister station in the northeast, 7SD. This poster hid a hole in the wall from another enthusiastic fist from a frustrated announcer, and that announcer was Trent Rose. He was not responsible. More of him later. A massive stack of carts, and the records you can see here and on your right are what are known as production discs. Now, a production disc is the music you will hear under a commercial, and what sets it aside, apart from these ones being from the 1940s, for example, but what sets it aside is once you buy it, you buy the copyright, whereas if you were to use recorded music by an established artist, there would be APRA fees to play. With this one, once you've bought the record, you own the music and can do with it pretty much what you will, and that particular system remains in place to today, but of course these days it'll be on CD or even just as an audio file on a computer. Back to this desk for something I couldn't quite get a shot of, but every couple of minutes a pulse used to come through this desk, who knows from where, and what you'd have to do was wait until the pulse moved the VU meter, then you'd record whatever you had to record very, very quickly, got it over and done with before the next pulse came down. It was early on a Sunday morning when this particular tape was made. This is Trent Rose, these days living in Swan Hill. Behind him there is one of the very original cart machines. That one can take the small carts you've seen in a few shots, anything up to a 12-inch cart, which would take up to an hour's programming. This was how we got our advertisements, anything else, from reel to reel, which would be recorded on, down onto a cart to be played to air. The big thing about carts were they were an endless tape with a tone on them that would stop them, so they were self-rewinding. So once you played it, it would finish, you could put a pulse on it, it would fast forward, it'd go to the end, and you knew that next time you put it in, it would play from the beginning again, which was a real breakthrough when it happened. So here's how you do it. You cue up the tape, you play your cart. It's now recording. At the end of it, you just push a button to put that pulse I was talking about on, which would also stop the recording, and Bob's your uncle, so to speak. Now moving into the 7SD absolute backup on Air Studio. The studio could go to air. This was the 7SD, beautiful music, easy listening library. This particular piece of machinery on the right we'll come to in a moment when we get a full shot of it, but it was a very, very important part of the radio station. But that was all the music 7SD had. It really wasn't a huge collection. Again, quite remarkable looking back on it now. Now you're looking at a phone recording unit, which in its time was totally illegal. It'd be all right today, believe it or not, but back in those times, it was illegal because it didn't have peeps to remind people that it was a recording on it, and that is where you do your pre-records if you couldn't get into production. Now, that phone dial, you can see there, could be used to turn transmitters on and off. That's how you got this radio station to air. And down here's what's known as a rack, and that patching rack is still used in radio today. It lets you manually send things from one place to another. It is an absolute godsend and has never been superseded by modern technology. This desk was the 7SD broadcast desk, but most importantly was the 7AD outside broadcast desk. You just picked the thing up, moved it through the doors, and away you went. You may notice again, it is another box with a whole host of knobs on it, and that was pretty much the way it worked. The very, very old turntables, but again, they hit the right speed. You can't ask for a lot more, and it wasn't a bad little microphone either, that small one. So that was the 7SD and real backup 7AD area. And this was just another setup that allowed you to go from reel to cart, again using one of the very, very old, very, very original big beasts of a cart machine. Those machines, if you need an anchor for your boat, they would be the ones to go for. Right, leaving 7AD's production area, we head off to the broadcast suite or on Air Studio, and once again Trent takes us in. The things to notice here are, of course, no cart machines, no computer screens. There would be up to 6 computer screens in the modern radio station, and, well, turntables are gone. It's all CDs these days. This is the lineup of carts that would have been live to air. So this is the basically the commercial content of the radio station, which was about average looking at that. These were the high rotation playlist records. That was some more music on reel-to-reel just to bolster the lack of music in the library. There are your turntables. That red phone was the phone you took calls from listeners on, and the buttons below it allowed you to do that. The yellow light flashed when 7SD went off the air. But here it was, the main broadcast desk for 7AD in the day. A pretty good desk. Those are that's the cart machine where you could play 3 carts, 1, 2, 3, one after the other, and that gave you an ad break. And again, the flashing light that let you know 7SD was off the air. And here's what it sounded like back in the day.
I don't know if the batteries are very good on this.
I probably used a lot better on the lawn. We were bloody well going to the microphone. Nine to 5, 80 radio. If you want a job, well, you can probably get this guy. It's Weird Al Yankovic, like a surgeon.
And to finish off, believe it or not, this was the tech's room. This is all poor Brian, who was our tech at the time, had to work on and with to repair everything, keep it going, put OBs to air. And we end up with a shot of the toilet. 7